The champ is here. The champ is here. The champ is here. The champ is here.
Now, I got to get your thoughts on this because you were talking about earlier jumping weight classes, and you did bring up, Gary at one point in your conversation. What's your thoughts on what you've seen lately, what was going on with Gary and the whole between the 126 to the 147, with him talking to move up that many weight classes to really want to fight a Terrance Crawford?
I feel like a lot of the comments that were made, because they had a dispute over something that happened, what was that, 2008, 2007, right before the Olympics. A lot of the comments that were made out of anger. And, as far as Gary and his management, I'm not sure if they would let him go up from 126 to 147. But if that were to happen, I could definitely see Gary fighting a couple guys up there and beating a couple guys up there. And also the Terrance Crawford fight, I could see that as a statement fight. Like if Gary were to win this fight, it's like he's really that good. Because a lot of people say he's good, a lot of people say he's overrated, but him fighting Terrance Crawford, if he wins the fight, he's really that good. And if he loses the fight, it's like, yeah, he's what we thought he was. So the fight would be like a make or break fight, and it will honestly put Gary in the talk, because of course, if you beat a guy on the pound for pound list, you all of a sudden become a part of that pound for pound list. So it should be interesting.
I think from a different strategy or different concept than my son. I watched Gary fight basically his whole life. Gary is one of those type of fighters, or just people who like challenges. I think Gary verbally means exactly what he said. I'll fight anybody. I think that he's in a great position to have his father with him, because I think his father will do the correct thing. Sometimes when these guys are young, including my son, they'll fight the world. They want to be the man, and sometimes it has to make logical sense. I listened to your interview with Gary, and he was saying, all I got to do is be 141, and they can sanction a bout. And for the fighter, you love for your fighter to feel like that. But if it's me as the manager or the father, I'm saying, son, there's a lot of cookies we could bite off between 26 and really 35. For you to make that type of jump, it just doesn't make a realistic jump. I mean, you talk about a guy who will weigh in at 47, turns maybe up to 54, 58, maybe even 60, who knows, and a guy that's actually training to add weight and will come in the ring at what he basically weighed, maybe lose a pound or two. And for me, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for your career. It doesn't make sense for your health. Gary's IQ and skill level, he got one of the highest. There's no other way to put it. But when you take a great big man and a great little man, at some point it may just be a power difference or a size difference. Gary can punch. For a 26, a 30, he can punch. But when you talk about jumping up to the 47s and going in the ring with a guy who might be a junior middleweight or a middleweight, that's just a toll. That's just a toll. I think Gary, if it was me, I would want to see Gary possibly get a fight with Shakur at 30, Devin Haney at 35. Maybe even see if there's a possibility of him fighting the winner of Tank, Santa Cruz. Those are the fights I think I would want to see for him. The fight that I think nobody wants right now, it seems to be, is a fight with Burchett. Burchett is the one that it seems like everybody that go to that 30.
It's interesting. Nobody mentions his name. Nobody mentions his name.
Nah, I mean, and rightly so. Rightly so. I think it's a lot of low-hanging fruit that are defining fights for Gary to get. But I think the Terrance Crawford thing is two grown men, two highly talented men, basically arguing. Because I don't think it makes, for Terrance, if he beats him, I'm supposed to beat the little guy. For Gary, if he goes up there, it's nothing to lose. I suppose to lose to the bigger and equally talented person. So, I just don't think it makes sense. But as far as Gary, the individual, you can't question the heart. That man will fight anybody.
Now I gotta ask you, Jalil, what's up next for you, man? As you preparing for your pro debut, man, what's going on with you right now? Because I know you've been going to the different gyms. Shout out to East End Boxing down in the Richmond area. You got Old School Boxing out there, did Rose Crawford. What other gyms have you been going to during this time?
Those two are pretty much it in the area. We went up to Philadelphia, Rock Ministries gym. Shout out to Johnny Rocket. We went up there for sparring.
Barbara Otha and that team from Ohio.
Yeah, also at Rock Ministries gym in Philadelphia. Shout out Otha. And yeah, other than that, we just been either in the backyard or at Old School Boxing gym, getting work, you know, staying in shape, staying ready. We got camps coming up. A few pro fighters and their management team have reached out, looking to get us in for camps. And we were looking to get on a card in the next few coming months, but the way that they're doing the cards, especially on Tank's card, you have only 3 fights, no undercard. You have those 2 fights that are under Tank. Both of them are most likely world title fights. So yeah, we're just waiting and staying ready. Like my dad said earlier, we talked to Leonard, and Leonard is not rushing us. We're in no rush. We are not struggling for money or anything, so we're just waiting patient.
Coach Calvin actually gave Jalil the best piece of advice. Coach Calvin asked Jalil about some sparring, and he asked Jalil how much he weighed. And at the time, Jalil was probably like 170. And Coach Calvin said, who you think you're going to spar with at 170? He was like, you're a young fighter. You should be ready to fight at a moment's notice. And that also means ready for camp. And at that point, I think Jalil really started taking mentally, I got to be down to where I'm supposed to be. And since then, he has come down. When we went to Philly, Calvin was like, boy, you done lost a lot of this weight. And that what makes it realistic for you to be able to go in camp. If you ain't ready to fight, you ain't ready to go in camp. So, you know, we just trying to stay ready.
You know, with that being said, I see you out there with the grandkids right there. You got the grandkids.
They want popsicles, so I got to give them popsicles.
Hey, how you doing? Now, with that being said, with you getting ready, like you said, Coach Calvin gave the blessing, man. He gonna bring you back out to camp for Tank out in Vegas. Is there a possibility, man, to get some of that knowledge from Floyd and maybe some work with Floyd? Because it seems like lately he working with all the young fighters out there, from Tank to Devin to Rolly to Angelo, Leo.
Leo just took that knowledge and won a belt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if that opportunity comes,
I'd be more than welcome to take it.
You know it. It's like when, if you remember, it's funny, we talk about every sport. When Joe Montana's son was in high school and they were saying, you can come in and coach if you got a Super Bowl ring. So all other parents had to step back. Joe Montana step up. So it's the same with him. You can tell him what you think he's doing wrong when you are a world famed 50-0 and have had numerous world titles. So now you can't turn that away if you get the opportunity to learn anything from Floyd, especially now in the next 10 years. He's still young. He's still saying, I got a lot to impart. You better get it, because at some point he may be an older Floyd and can only be outside the ring. And you can only get in the verbal, not the actual one-on-one physical.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because, you know, actually Coach Calvin said the same thing yesterday. He said with the vast knowledge that Floyd has, why wouldn't I want him to give that to Tank? And, you know, work as a team doing that.
Yeah.
But right. I guess they want us to have a crab in the barrel mentality.
Yeah, you know, the media always tries to portray it as something that is not. You know, most of the people in the media that are on the outside looking in, they're saying, man, Floyd is Tank's new trainer. And when Tank said he was setting up camp differently, they was thinking of it as, oh, he's getting rid of everybody that was a part of his original camp. No, it's not like that. He's just, you know, taking advice from a legendary fighter.
Yeah, broaden his horizons. Yeah, that's broaden his horizons. That's any fighter. You would have to be a fool to think, you know, the way we doing it is the only way. I tell people all the time, I've said it to you, each weight class has multiple world titles, but the 4 major world titles. Tell me every weight class every champion been trained by the same person, then I can go with that philosophy. But when you go to them weight classes, you got 3 or 4 different people training each one of them guys. So it's a lot of different ways to get there. So, you know, it's what fits your fighter. It's not what fits the coach. So that's how I look at it. I think all those guys are great. I think the potential for a crazy future is there when these current guys run the gambit. The Garys, the Tanks, the Spences, the Crawfords, when all those guys run the gambit, the next group that comes in, I think you're going to see a renaissance to the 80s. Now, when is the last time you heard guys cross promotions and talk about, man, let's jump the fence? Like Gary said, let's jump the fence and make this happen. That was some 80s stuff. Now that you got Teofimo, you got Shakur, you got Devin Haney, hopefully you have my son in these mixes. These guys are saying, look, we just came from the amateurs. We know what it's like to lose, get back in line. Let's just fight. I want to fight the best guys. The defining fights that you have in your career, they happen all through your career because it depends on what the other fighter you fought does with the rest of his career. So every fight, from the first one to your last championship one, is a defining fight. And I hope that we get those opportunities. I respect Gary for saying the things he said in your interview. Gary turned the clock back when nobody was friends in boxing. You know, we fighters. We got to be warriors. I ain't got time to be your friend. He's looking for that defining win. I think the Lomachenko fight was a great fight. They were both still young in age and young in their careers. That was a defining fight. If you look at it for Lomachenko, he came on the A side. He won that fight. So he can always say, based on what Gary's done after that, that was his defining fight. Now I think it's only fair that Gary gets that same opportunity to have the same kind of defining fight, or the opportunity to make it for him, whether it's against Shakur, Devin Haney, Tank, whoever it is. Because I would want those same situations for my son. You know, we want defining fights because that's where your Hall of Fame credentials are made at.
You know, it's interesting that you said that because, you know, I asked Gary that question about Lomo since, you know, negotiations had broke down between him and Teofimo Lopez. Would he take the 1.2? He said most definitely. Going back to just looking back at the situation right now, currently what you see with Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez, where he turned down.
I fight either one of them. I fight either one of them. If they not fighting nobody, they don't got no fight. What's up, Lomachenko? I'm on your ass anyway.
Would you take that 1.2?
Would I take it? Fuck yeah, I take it. I take it just to, man. I take it just so I can break my foot off in his ass. I take that for him. I take it for both of them.
So it's not about the money; it's about legacy.
Like I said,
and just boxing reports today said, you know, Teofimo's having to change of heart now. He might take that fight
because you don't get an opportunity every day to fight the defining fight. You look at Floyd. Me and my son talk about it all the time. Floyd took his career in his own hands when he bought himself out and then said, I'm going to fight Oscar. That was the defining fight. You can look back on every fight Floyd fought. They were great fights, but if you want the one that went from Pretty Boy Floyd to Money Mayweather, he had to beat Oscar De La Hoya. He just Floyd Mayweather.
You know, it's interesting that you brought that particular fight up because in that case, I think it was like an 80-20 split, something outrageous with the numbers, and yeah, Floyd was like,
odds against him.
Floyd said if he could have, he would have put me in De La Hoya shorts. In the interview I saw, he said he would have put me in the shorts, but he knew the money wasn't the end goal. If I win this one, then I call the shots on the checks. If Teofimo beat Lomo, he calls the shots on the checks. That's him. If Lomo get the win, it don't kill him. Canelo lost to Floyd at the same young age. What happened? He got back in line, and now he's one of the top fighters in the world. You know, when you defining your legacy, each one of these boxers or champions that I've had the chance to talk to and have my son talk to, before they thought about money, everything was about where I stand in this sport. When Gary didn't hesitate when he said, I'll take that 1.2. But he only said it for Loma because that is what he want back. You know, I'm not going to fight Tevin or one of them because if they lose, it ain't worth it. Mm-hmm. But for him, that warrior mentality, he wanted to get back what was beaten out. If he lost that fight, cool. Give me my chance to get it back. That's what champions do. If something crazy happens and he moves up to 47 to fight Terrance Crawford, I'm going to respect it. But like I said, at the end of the day, he said, I want to fight. If you got an issue with me, let's take care of the issue. And I got to respect that.